starting with our first panel session, which is on the global warming, fossil fuel versus alternate sources of energy, for which we have with us a very esteemed panelist, which I would now be taking the opportunity to call them on stage. Can we give a great round of applause for our panelists? I would once again be calling our moderator of this session, CS DEEPAK JAIN, sir. And Globe App for Climate Action. And I would now be inviting Ms. Anushka Parmar. She's a senior research analyst in sustainability. Can we give a great round of applause, please? I would now like to call Mr. Vinod Pandey to please come on stage. He's the ex-MD and also the SBI Foundation Advisor, CSR PTC of India. Can we give a great DEEPAK JAIN, sir, who will be moderating this panel session for us. I think he's just rushed out to fetch somebody. Once again, I'd like to appreciate the efforts taken by DMA for organizing this Global Sustainability Summit. I would also like to extend my gratitude towards our associate partners, our ICSI, Institute of Company Secretaries of India, ICMA, Institute of Cost Accountants of India, our sponsors for this event, NDIM, New Delhi Institute of Management, and Nordcorp Company IT Partner, and our supporting partners, Vijayash Foundation and Griha Council. I would once again request Deepak sir to please come on stage to moderate. Moderators, he has DEEPAK JAIN sir for this session. Can we once again give a great round of applause for our moderator and all our panelists.
So thank you, friends. In the inaugural we discussed various climate change issues, various problems in the world, in India, as far as sustainability is concerned and climate crisis is concerned. So the very first session, panel discussion, we have kept on global warming, fossil fuels versus alternate source of energy. So friends, you all know why this global warming is happening. It is happening because of the greenhouse gas emissions we emit from our factories, from our vehicles, from coal, from fossil fuels, and we need to find an alternative to the fossil fuels. And the government and the world over, we have been exploring various renewable energy sources. We all know that we will be going to discuss in this session: solar energy, wind energy, biofuels, even nuclear energy, hydrogen, geothermal. And then the panelists, I will request that we should discuss the net zero targets. Is it realistic at present or achievable? I think limiting global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius looks difficult now. We are now somehow thinking that if we can limit it by 2%, then even then it is good. Maybe our panelists will be able to guide us more on this topic. And what we need is a mass movement. This summit is also a step towards that हम public को जितना ज़्यादा involve कर सकें इस चीज़ में to understand this fact that how much that this is important. And I would request, I think I will begin with Anushka, that she will throw some light on this important topic. And in her view, the net zero targets is possible. So whatever we are emitting in the atmosphere, the carbon, how we can minimize it. And I read that carbon, when we emit the carbon in the atmosphere, it remains there for thousands of years, more than 1,000 of years. So it is very important that we are watchful of our carbon footprints. I was reading once Bill Gates, and he wrote in his book that whenever he always watch and be watchful of his carbon footprints. And if he travel by air or something like that, so he try to balance it in some or the other way. So इसी तरह से हम लोगों को भी देखना है कि अगर जो हमारे कार्बन फुट से हमने बाई चांस कुछ इमरजेंसी है, हमने it is unavoidable, so we need to balance it. जैसे कई बार हम ईटिंग हैबिट्स में भी होता है ना कि आज ये खा लिया, आज ये नहीं खाना. फिर शुगर का रहता है कि आज इतनी शुगर ले ली, भाई इतना मीठा हो गया, आप आज ये नहीं खाएंगे, कल नहीं खाएंगे. तो इसी तरह से we need to balance our carbon footprints. So we start with Anushka.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm quite delighted to be here. And right before I answer the question about net zero, is it achievable, I quickly want to introduce my company to set the context of where I come from. So my company is Swiss Learning Exchange, or in short, SLX. And SLX is an edtech company that helps individuals and businesses achieve sustainability through research, advocacy, education, and also partnerships. So I personally work for the research team of Swiss Learning Exchange, and we work with clients to help them achieve sustainability through creating impact reports, creating case studies, or even documentaries. We also work with our academy team to create sustainability education content, which essentially means conducting primary research, secondary research, and collecting important information around sustainability issues. So as part of this, in the last few years, I personally have done research, extensive research around renewable energy. And it doesn't make sense to talk about net zero or global warming without talking about renewable energy. So as part of the education and creating awareness that we do, I come across a lot of learners asking me simple questions. And I would like to actually ask you also, that which is the sector which is contributing the most amount of global greenhouse gas emissions? Would anybody like to take a guess? Yes, sir.
Energy.
Power sector. Energy sector. And is that only energy, which is electricity, or is it transport or industries as well?
Mainly transport, I think. Transport emissions.
Right. And what would be the percentage of the emissions coming from the energy sector?
More than 50%.
Right. So actually it's surprising, like it's not surprising that it's coming from the energy sector, because it's the bane of all our industrial activities today.
It is big industry like steel, cement.
Correct, industries as well. But the percentage is actually what surprises most people, and it's actually 73% of greenhouse gas emissions that is emitting from the energy sector. And to put it in context, if we think aviation has a lot of emits a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, only 2% of that 73%. Right? So energy sector and mitigating the emissions coming from here would be the most important thing to tackle global warming. Right? So I want to kind of contextualize in 3 questions, basic questions that, from my experience, that learners have asked me about this. Is that, okay, so global warming is happening, greenhouse gas emissions are emitting from energy sector, and renewable is supposed to be the solution for this, right? Is it even achievable? Is it worth it, right? So to which I say that one of the reasons that fossil fuel, and which currently is still primarily is contributing to main greenhouse gas emissions. So even today we're using about 79% of fossil fuel, which is contributing to the majority of the greenhouse gas emissions as well. Right? So if you look at fossil fuel, the characteristic of fossil fuel is such that it's extremely energy dense, it's highly efficient, and it's also the most flexible source of energy, which means it can be used to create electricity, it can be used to create fuel, and also raw materials for some of the products, right? As opposed to, if you look at renewable energy, it's highly intermittent. Sun only shines certain parts of the day, wind only blows in certain parts of the region, right? So it's intermittent. It's also very low efficiency. So if I have to give a context, let's say a gallon of gasoline has about, let's say, 37 kilowatt of hour energy. And to generate that same energy of power, renewable, like a typical solar panel would have to function for a week long to generate that same 37 kilowatt hour. So the efficiency is quite low, which is why renewable currently is not able to compete with fossil fuels, right? So regardless of all of this, even though it's not competing with fossil fuels, the transition has to happen because fossil fuels is what is contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions. The second thing that a lot of learners ask is, okay, like this transition is important, but is it even worth it? To which I say that, let's take the example of India. in 2020, India generated about 300,000 kilowatt hour of renewable electricity, just electricity, right? And according to IEA calculator, carbon emission calculator, right, just purely from generating renewable energy. So there's clearly an opportunity here, right? So now the third question that they ask is, okay, there is an opportunity, but how do we transition? The transition is actually very complex, right? We already know cutting down fossil fuel is not the answer because 100% renewable energy is still quite distant, right? So what we need is sort of an energy mix. So mix of fossil fuel, mix of renewable energy. And in order to do all of this, what we need is actually energy efficiency, right? Even IPCC, for that matter, has said that if we put energy efficiency technology and we make light bulbs, AC, all of that energy efficient, we would be able to not just lower our emissions, but also lower our costs. Because electricity from renewables is getting cheaper and cheaper by the decade, right? From what it was a few decades ago from solar panel, it has come down drastically now. So technology, the price of technology has come down, but also the price of electricity that's being generated from all of these renewables is also coming down, right? So with all of this said, I think with renewable energy, and not just solar, wind, but also nuclear and hydrogen, which are up and coming technologies, I think we are well on the way on a path to probably achieve net zero. But that cannot happen without reducing our fossil fuel consumption. So that's all I would like to say for now.
Kavita, if I can I ask, don't we have hands-free mics? Please see, that would be more convenient even for audience to raise any question. Audience also needs mics. So move on to Prachi. Prachi, I mean, we all know that this is we have to do this. This transition has to happen. But I was reading that for shifting from coal to producing electricity instead of coal from renewable energy sources, and maybe we are a very poor country and we have very poor states also. For example, Jharkhand is a state that we are having various coal mines. So how we can justify? There are many people who depends in the Jharkhand poverty, कितनी poverty है. तो किस तरह से हम how it can be a just transition? How we can ensure a just transition that there is no job losses?
Absolutely. So before I get to that, because I started my journey as a young student, I want to go through me discovering what some of the talking points mean that we are discussing in this panel today, from net zero targets to a just transition to solar to building a mass movement. How I discovered and made sense of this world. For me, it started with, as a young student, doing a Google search on what is the biggest problem in the world right now. What came up? Climate change. So I was very surprised to see that, because all global experts, scientists, people around the world were saying climate change is the most pressing problem in front of us today. Nobody around me was really talking about it. So I started reading up more on what climate change is, and I saw that what it's doing now is that the average temperature of the world has increased by 1 degree Celsius at the time. So I was like, that doesn't seem like much, why should it matter? And then I looked up all the crazy things that are happening because of it. Extreme weather events happening more frequently and more intensely. Coastal erosion, loss of biodiversity, sea level rise, glaciers melting. It was like a Pandora's box that kept going on and on and on. And it seemed very scary. But it also seemed like it was beyond me. So one of the second question that I asked myself was, yes, it does sound worrying, but we also have enough issues in front of us today. Why is it important that we do something about climate change now? Why must we act today? And what is the world doing about this? And that's when I saw the global targets ahead of us, which was that there were two relevant numbers in this world. One was 51 billion and one was 0. So 51 billion tons is the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that we put collectively in the atmosphere as of today. and we have to get to net zero by 2050. So why? Why by 2050? So that's when I realized that climate change was like a bathtub. So even if you have a tap with water flowing from it, and even if you reduce the flow of the tap, someday or the other the bathtub is going to overflow, and that's what's happening to the earth right now. That's also when I learned about tipping points, which were the reasons why we must act now, which is that so greenhouse gases are not really the villains in this story, right? They're the heroes of the earth. They're the reasons we exist, and they're the reasons why the earth is not too cold and civilization could even thrive. Then what's the problem? The problem is that, like my grandmother likes to say, too much of anything is bad. So 200 parts per million is how much CO2 we require in the atmosphere. And if you look up today, if any of us could Google, I don't know what it is today, but in Delhi there must be around 420 parts per million CO2 or even more. So there's double the amount of greenhouse gases that are required in the atmosphere that humans are putting in. And that's doing all of these crazy things. So then I learned about tipping points, and I realized what's happening is that basically the earth is in equilibrium with 200 parts per million CO2. But as humans put in more and more, we start moving towards a state that's not stable. We put in more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, temperatures keep rising. You see that there in the newspaper, all sorts of crazy things that are happening, extreme weather events happening more frequently. Somewhere there's a drought, somewhere there's a wildfire. We read it in the newspaper. The effects are becoming more frequent and they're coming at our door now. And we reach 2050, this is the tipping point. That's when we reach a point of no return. And in reality, these tipping points look like 15 very concrete points which would happen if we don't reach net zero by 2050. It could look like the Indian monsoon changing permanently, which would affect our farmers, which would affect our access to food. It could look like the Amazon forest dying back very suddenly. So, like most challenges, they take place slowly and gradually. But climate change is a problem that, as we take longer to solve it, is going to accelerate very quickly. And we might reach a point where we cannot return back from. And that's why the target 2050. Now, is it just? Is it, how can we expect, especially countries like India, where we already face so many challenges on ground, challenges of livelihood, challenges of people's livelihoods depending on coal plants, like you said. Why must we do it then? I think what I also realized in this journey is that climate action is not just the right thing to do, it's also the profitable thing to do. We must not take climate action just because we have to, but India has an abundance of sun. So adopting to solar could also mean that we have a chance to become the energy capital of the world. Organizations that take climate action today are going to be the leaders of tomorrow, and the ones that don't are going to lose out. So we have a target in front of us to create a whole new society that is based on renewables. And in creating that, there are a lot of opportunities available for individuals, for organizations, for countries. So you do it to become the leaders of tomorrow, not just because it's the right thing, but also because it's the lucrative thing to do. Now, on the third point of creating a mass movement, when I realized all of this was happening, I remember going to my father and asking him, it seems like a big problem. What can an ordinary girl like me do about it? And we decided to start from our own homes. We took up a quest to reduce our personal carbon footprint by 10% that year, and a quest that all of us have also taken today. So in order to do that, I started doing research on which activities of mine are leading to most emissions, how can I reduce them, but also more importantly, how can I measure them? Because you can only change what you can measure. So I made up a list of hundreds of actions that I can take. And I started measuring the greenhouse gas emissions I'm avoiding by taking these sustainable actions in my day-to-day life. A few months into doing this, two very interesting things happened. The first one was that I began to enjoy it. It felt almost like a fun game that I was playing with my family. It felt good that at least at my own level, I was doing something. And then my friends, my neighbors, people around me began to notice and said, you're doing something interesting and we would like to be a part of this. That's when I started thinking about how can I get global citizens in this individual quest I started. And from this, we came up with an idea to build Cool the Globe app. An app which would unite people like us to start taking climate action in our own homes. So from the dorm room of my college, I began building this app. As soon as a user would come in, they'd get a monthly target to reduce their carbon footprint, and then they'd be able to see hundreds of simple day-to-day actions they would take in order to do that. But what difference can one person make? When people like us come together, our collective efforts can be extraordinary. And so we kept a global meter on the homepage of the app, which will show the emissions saved by all users combined. So by the time I graduated, we launched the app, and then we realized now is just the beginning. The real task is in convincing people that in the face of climate change, our actions matter and we can make a difference. So we started making campaigns on what the common man can do about climate change. And those campaigns were picked up by citizens. People started recording their climate actions on Cool the Globe app, and they started telling others about it. One action inspired 10 others, and before we knew it, our campaigns had reached over 25 million citizens around the world. And as I speak to you, people like you and I from 110 countries have come together on the app and saved over 2 million kg of greenhouse gas emissions, and this is just the beginning. If there's one thing I've learned from this story is that when I first looked up climate change, I read somewhere, somebody had said it's going to take a miracle to avoid the worst effects of climate change. But when people like us come together to take climate action, miracles can happen. And so the 2050 target may seem ambitious, may seem unachievable, but when ordinary citizens get involved, I think impossible things can happen.
Great, great. Can we clap as loudly as possible? She's quite young and...
What are those simple steps, which you have suggested?
Absolutely. So the app is free to download on Play Store or App Store. We have hundreds of actions across travel, home, things you can do in your office, use of materials, waste segregation, food choices. So there's hundreds of things, and everybody can make a choice that makes them happy. If I always say that for citizens, we are hesitant to take climate action because we feel like we're going to have to change our life completely. But we say start small and start from the things that give you joy. So one of our users decided to, because his New Year's resolution was to become healthier. So he decided to start going to his office on a cycle instead of a car. So he reached his fitness goals, and he also recorded saving over 30 kg of CO2 emissions in doing this for a few months. Another old woman, now she could not really use a cycle, that's not practical for her. So she called me up and said that my granddaughter was getting married, and we collectively decided that she would use my sari from my wedding for her own wedding. And they recorded saving 15 kg of CO2 emissions on the app by doing this. So there's a vast degree of action that we can all take, and we choose an action that makes most sense for our life.
Good, very nice. So हम लोगों को ये miracle ही create करना है. We have to create this miracle to achieve net zero targets, and in fact it is a miracle in itself, unless and until we all combine and do something, a mass movement is needed. So Mr. Pandey, what are your views on the subject, and would you like to throw anything on geopolitical conflicts which happen in the world and its effect on the climate change, or anything you would like to say, guide us?
Well, the topic is for today is very good: global warming, fossil fuel versus alternate sources of energy. Well, alternate sources of energy will run out, but fossil fuels will not. While fossil fuels, alternate sources of energy will never run out, whereas fossil fuels will. Like you will run short of oil today or tomorrow. Saudi Arabia cannot really provide us the oil that is required for years and years and years. But as far as the alternate energy is concerned, like the sun, the wind, and the other powers, the renewable energy power will continue forever. because I don't think the sun god is ever going to disappoint us, or the wind energy is ever going to stop. Now, global warming, as far as global warming is concerned, India is on the 5th spot among the top 10 contributors to global warming. While US is on the top and China is on the 2nd. So US is the most developed, so obviously they give the most of global warming. China being 2nd, it gives that. And India is on the 5th spot.
These three countries are responsible for all the deaths and chaos which is there on the globe.
Absolutely.
The way USA lives and the citizens lead their lives, you need 1.5 Earth, maybe 2 Earths for the entire fraternity to live in. They consume almost 60% of the resources. Maximum water, maximum electricity.
Absolutely.
It's a rogue country. It's not a political statement, it's a fact.
Absolutely.
Secondly, the population, as Ms. Shavgankar was telling us, it's the population which is the main problem here. Like you're talking about the tipping point. You can do whatever you want to do, but if the population doesn't stop, if it's not in check, things will not improve. It can go on and on and on. You will reach the tipping point. You see the water is flowing slowly, but ultimately the bucket will fill. These are the three countries, these are three problems.
Exactly. And like US is the most, has been over the years, the most working country as far as climate. Absolutely. And they want India to take up the charge to stop climate change.
Yes.
Which is a little
unjust.
Yes.
Which is unjust.
Which is a little unfortunate, but then that is how the world works. Fortunately, India is also developing pretty fast now, and the world is now noticing that yes, India is also one of the.
There is significant change, no doubt.
And things will change very, very soon. What are the contributors of global warming? Like it is mentioned in the schedule also. It's it's uneven weather, forest fires, tsunami, floods, landslide, excessive rains, etc. Which are the main contributing factors for all these effects? It is fossil fuel, which is coal, oil, and gas. Now, can we do without coal? Can we do without oil? Can we do without gas? As of now, no. But time has come. Renewable energy is now the latest thing which even India is doing it. In fact, I remember there's a place called Bhadla in Rajasthan, which has one of the largest solar power parks in the world. Yes, it generates approximately, I think, 2,500 megawatts of energy. I've been there. We were doing a skill development program for the rural youth so that they can take care of the solar panels and all that. And because we did that skill development, though it is not connected to the climate change, but what happened was the solar power plants, the people who were running the solar power plants started getting skilled youth from the local area, so they could increase their capacity much faster instead of getting people from like Bihar, UP and all that which they were getting earlier. So those are, there are a lot of things which are not exactly linked but interlinked. Like skill development in solar power is also linked to development of the solar power. Now another thing that is happening is uneven weather, like due to climate change over the years. I remember during earlier years in Delhi, around January 15, we thought now the cold weather is gone. And today I'm still wearing a coat and something inside because it's so, and all that is because of climate change. Forest fire is another issue which has affected climate change, but though fortunately it is not much in India. It is more in US and the European countries. But then if it affects the climate in US and European countries, ultimately it comes down to the entire world. Now there are a lot of tsunamis that are happening. Why do tsunamis occur? They are caused by landslides, glacier carvings, and also volcanic eruptions. And the root cause of all this is again climate change. Why do landslides occur? Because all the snow melts and then landslides starts. What are the solutions to stop global warming? the most effective solution to stop global warming is to shift to alternate and natural sources of energy, which are, number one, of course, is solar energy, which of course is unlimited and can be continued. The only problem with solar energy, it is not available round the clock. But, and there is no storage facility available as of now. But I think sooner than later, that will also be developed so that solar energy is produced and stored for future. Wind power is another very important source of energy. Wind power mostly I have seen I have seen it in maybe Jaisalmer or some other places is there, like Tamil Nadu also. They generate a lot of energy due to wind power. Biofuels is another energy which is superior in environmental benefits and is economically competitive in comparison to fossil fuels. Biofuel, also one thing I'll mention, though not directly connected, but it is connected to this, is in Punjab, if you remember in Ludhiana and all, during September, October, there is a lot of stubble burning which happens. So in the corporate that I was working in earlier, we tried to take up this issue and we donated them some machinery which actually cuts the stubble, mulches it and puts it in the ground. Or else, the other thing is, cuts the stubble and that stubble is used for creating energy, which is a little better than the coal-fired energies that we talk about. Then hydrogen and geothermal is another source of energy which needs to be upped and which needs to be created a little more, and vast pools of renewable energy is required. Oil, gas and coal still provide 80% of the world's energy, but most renewable energy sources throw up challenges around cost and intermittency. These are two things which renewable energy has to take care of. Like cost, like solar power plants are very, very expensive to install and to run, whereas a coal-fired power plant is not very expensive. We just pay around, I don't know, 5 rupees or 10 rupees per unit or something. Whereas if we shift to solar, I think it will probably cost a lot more. So if we commit to alternate sources of energy, we may limit the increase in global temperature to below 1.5 degrees as is planned, and ensure we leave the planet in a relatively better condition. And rightly said in the agenda, let's commit to melt hearts, not glaciers. Take action against global warming now. Moreover, I repeat what Dr. Mishra said. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So let's ensure we give the earth back to them in a better condition that we have inherited. So this is my take on this.
Yes, please. Thank you. We appreciate. So, friends, as Mr. Pandey rightly said,
Yeah.
please, we can have it in the end, please, and we are already, so time be shortage hai. We will have question and answer session, just give me some time, please give me some time. For the, in the last month, since I remember 25th December to 31st January, Delhi has faced a severe cold, and in fact, when I read, it has been all over the world, in Canada, US, everywhere. The severe cold waves were there, and amazingly, in few places, forest fire is happening in January itself. So we have a PPT prepared by students, inputs from NDIM students and one student from MD University. We would like to play that PPT that will show what all happened in 2023 because of these greenhouse gas emissions. Forest fires, cold, tsunamis, landslides, and हम कई बार सोचते हैं कि यार हम तो यहाँ बैठे हैं, यहाँ कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. We have to think about the world because India में भी बहुत कुछ हो रहा है, and दिल्ली में भी जो हमने ये 25 इस बार जो कोल्ड वेव है थोड़ा इट रन फॉर मेरे ख्याल से 40 डेज. इतना लंबा कोल्ड वेव्स मेरे ख्याल से दिल्ली में I did not experience so far. So can you run that PPT please?
Sir, mic on.
चेन्नई में वैसे 10 साल में एक बार ये प्रॉब्लम ये सिचुएशन क्रिएट रहती है. इस बार जल्दी क्रिएट हुई है. नागालैंड the cold wave struck northern India on January 24. Then global, Turkey, Syria, Hong Kong, sea. It is all happening because of greenhouse gas emissions effect. Morocco, Libya, Afghanistan, Somalia, Mexico, November 21, 2003, forest fires. China to Japan, deadly cold is gripping East Asia. And interestingly, January 2024, we have forest fires. So just a look, it affects us. इस समिट का पर्पस भी यही है कि हम लोग बिजी हैं, we are busy in our daily life, and we should also realize that what is happening, and we all need to watch our carbon footprints. Abhi there was one view that population also affects us, this global warming and all. But आपने ही उसका एक आंसर भी दिया कि it all depends on my living habits. Population पे इतना ज़्यादा डिपेंड नहीं भी करता, मेरी लिविंग हैबिट्स पे डिपेंड करता है. बिकॉज यूएस का आपने सही एग्जांपल दिया. यूएस इज क्रिएटिंग इज द वन ऑफ द मोस्ट number 1 polluter, but India we have more population, but we are at number 5 I believe as far as pollution is concerned. First is US, China, EU, then India. So pollution it depends on my habits, it depends on my habits कि हम किस तरह से रहते हैं. और ये समिट भी इसीलिए हम लोगों ने कंडक्ट किया कि that we can watchful, conscious of our habits. So we have 5 to 10 minutes left. For the next 5 minutes, I will very brief from Anushka, from Mr. Pandey, and then again Prachi for 5 minutes. So 1 minute for each. Then for 5 minutes we will have a question answer session because we received this thing that we have to wind up as early as possible. Yes, Anushka, any final view from your side? It should be inspiring for the others and for us and for you also.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of important points actually came across. Well, firstly, that we always blame the industries, we always blame the government for not doing enough. And from Prachi, what we've seen that we can at individual level also make a difference. But what I would like to say is that without collaboration, without working together, and this I mean with industries as well, by sharing knowledge, by creating awareness, by innovating, doing all of this together will be the only solution to mitigate global warming. So yeah, I hope that more and more companies, individuals become more conscious about their actions and help each other out as well to mitigate climate change. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Pandey. 1 minute only. Whatever you want to say.
When I came here, I was just speaking to Anushka, and I told her that I forgot I did not print the paper on which I had written down my points. I've got it on iPad. She said, rightly so, because you are actually contributing climate sustainability because you are not using paper. So what I will also suggest, let's stop using paper and use our mobiles. Everyone has a mobile. Most people have iPads or computers or something. So it's better to work and jot down points on your electronic system devices rather than to put it down on paper. And it's a good thing that India Habitat Center has recyclable, I think, environment-friendly paper. So that is my point.
Good. Yes.
Let us all support to climate change.
Yes.
And one more thing. When I came here, instead of using a cap, I used Blue Smart because at least they are supporting the climate. And when I'll go back, maybe I'll use a metro. If I don't get
You can clap for him.
Blue Smart
Because मेरे को भी हैबिट डेवलप करनी है, हमारे साथ में डेवलप करनी है इस एज में, तो I appreciate you. Yes, Prachi, last few words, 1 minute only.
And so when you use the metro, record it on the app. So we'll have one more.
I'll do that.
Yes.
I'll do that.
But I just want to quickly also talk about how individual efforts don't just remain in our homes. Individual efforts often lead to more larger systemic changes also. And I'll talk about how we experience that. So when users around the world began using the app in their homes, in their individual capacity, so many of our users came and said, I'm doing this in my home. Now, how can I get my colleagues? How can I get my friends? How can I get my batchmates to do this with me? At the same time, a lot of organizations noticed that their employees were using this app. And they said, can you develop a similar version of this for our workforce to gamify climate action in the workforce? And so from this, the next phase of our effort emerged when we're developing this app for organizations and for employees so that these efforts can happen collectively as communities. And our next vision is that every school, every organization, every city should have their own version of a climate action, cool the globe community. And so I witnessed how, when I went to COP, the climate change city officer said, we would like to use our app for our citizens to hold competitions for sustainability. And so I witnessed how something that started from my own home, then turned into my friends' houses, then turned into an app, then turned into a movement for climate action, and now is turning into an organizational and a community effort also. So individual efforts are not just about us. They're the very foundation of the systemic and collective changes that are required to fight climate change.
Good. We have 5 minutes for question-answer questions. Any questions from Gupta ji, Joman? Yes.
I, on behalf of the MC of Delhi Management Association, appreciate the speaker's point of view, one. Secondly, announcement for members of the DMA. We have membership forms which are available at the reception, and 3 of our audience members have already volunteered to become members. Question to Prachi: how do we involve the RWAs, Resident Welfare Association 1, and the Senior Citizen Society? Thank you for attempting to answer. Thanks a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. And one of the most supporters of Cool the Globe have been senior citizens actually, because they would, I've noticed how so many of our first ambassadors were people over the age of 70, because they would talk about it to everybody that they made that week. They would talk about the sustainable action they took on the app. So we would love to have you as ambassadors of Cool the Globe, and we would also love to make a community for your association where you can track the collective greenhouse gas emissions avoided by all of our members.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, RWAs can very effectively play a good part. They can install on their rooftops solar panels, and waste segregation is very critical. In my East Delhi area, in the one year before, there was a drive to separate your wet dust and dry dust, and I found after 3 months it is over. मतलब फिर सब लोग उसको भूल गए, because my mate came, मैंने उसको बोला अलग अलग करो, तो कहीं सर ये सबके सब सोसाइटी में भूल गए हैं करके आप कहाँ पीछे पड़ गए इसके। तो हम क्योंकि इसमें हैं तो हमारे को ध्यान रहता है, तो ये RWA इसमें बड़ा अच्छा रोल प्ले कर सकते हैं। इट इज़ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट दैट वी सेग्रीगेट आवर वेस्ट, एंड वी शुड स्टार्ट। अभी गवर्नमेंट हैज़ इंट्रोड्यूस ए स्कीम दैट 1 crore install solar panels on the 1 crore houses. It can be a huge task to identify those 1 crore houses. But all the residential societies, RWAs, the big society, they should install the solar panels on their rooftops. In my society, I am trying my best. In my area, there are 60, 70, 80 societies, but none of them so far has done this. Everyone is busy in their work. Yes, any question from the side?
Yeah,
a question, please. Yes.
In the very informative, I'm Dr. C.S. Arora, I teach at DTU.
Okay.
In the very informative slideshow, various disasters were shown, where is it floods or tsunami or fires in various jungles and all that. But apart from that, earthquake was also shown. So I wonder whether we could do something to avoid earthquakes, because earthquake, as I understand, is a very natural phenomena because of the tectonic shifts. Rather than by pollution or by polluting the environment or polluting things. So maybe some expert could answer on that, whether earthquakes are also one of the reasons, or also one of the outcomes which can be handled by us collectively.
Any expert on this from the audience, from the panelists? Any expert on this? Because so far, when I read about the Joshimath and all, what happened in the Uttaranchal, in the newspaper it was reported it is happening because of our bad habits also, because we have been doing various construction we have been involved in various construction to modernize and all. कहीं ना कहीं उसकी वजह से भी वो earthquakes इफेक्ट करते हैं, कहीं ना कहीं pollution let me tell you yes our oceans are getting warmer day by day because of carbon emissions. Our oceans has a capacity to absorb the carbon, and now they have absorbed excess carbon, and this is creating a flooding in the coastal areas, at least I'm sure. The sea rise is happening, tsunamis and all this is happening because of global gas emissions. Earthquake, I'm not sure.
And whether people like Prachi can help us in mitigating the earthquakes.
I wish that was that simple, but
If you have any specific answer, please.
so for earthquakes, as you rightly pointed out, it's nothing to do with global warming emissions. If we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, that's true. So I won't talk much about earthquake in that sense, but what we have to kind of look into is that all the other landslides, all of those that were shown, I think that the frequency of these events are a lot more. And what happens through global warming is that we won't be able to predict any of these events. So what we need to do is be able to, earthquake to an extent we're still not able to predict, right? And similarly with these events that are happening, we won't be able to predict it. There might be extreme droughts in areas where we're currently seeing a lot of rainfall, right? So I think all of this again goes back to the conversations that we've had about global warming and emitting, reducing our emissions, global greenhouse gas emissions. So, yeah.
Last question from that lady. Yes, please.
Just to add on this earthquake point, I was reading somewhere that in New York City, because of the weight of all the big buildings, it's all skyscrapers everywhere. The land is, going down by very few millimeters, but it's going down. So it's creating that weight, collective weight of so many buildings. And I live in Gurgaon, and I have all skyscrapers of Gurgaon around me, and sometimes I get very scared to see all these tall buildings all around and realize that this concentration of population in certain urban pockets, wherever it's happening, be it Mumbai, be it Bangalore, be it Hyderabad. I went to Hyderabad after 10 years recently, and I was amazed to see the development. And our company does agricultural work near Hyderabad, and they were sad that the forests are shrinking, the agricultural land is shrinking because Hyderabad the city is going so much towards outskirts. So somewhere I think civic planning is also a very important area. Government and the policymakers need to pay attention to this, that if our population is spread out evenly across states, cities, and employment opportunities or whatever, the work from home opportunities can enable this. it's not good to have so much population concentrated in high-rises and in civic pockets at one place, because it puts pressure on parking, on water, on electricity, on all these things, and obviously then, whenever there's a disease spread, for example in COVID, so the congested areas were the ones which had more problems, and those who were in villages, they were much better off. So I think this urban congestion is also something that we could look at.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. We now finish this panel discussion, and looking, because we are half an hour behind the schedule. Thank you, Nidhi. Yes, we would like to felicitate the panelists.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all our speakers for sharing with us their innovative ideas as to how we can contribute in saving our planet. Now, can we give a great round of applause for our speaker, Ms. Prachi Shivgaonkar. Thank you so much for sharing with us your journey. I will now be a major factor in mitigating all of these crises. Now I'd be requesting sir to kindly felicitate Mr. Vinod Pandey, sir. Thank you so much for in depth about tsunamis, what was natural calamity.
For my visiting card, I said, sorry, I don't have visiting card these days. I have it here, take a picture.
I'm in the same boat as you are.
Oh, there you are. So now, stop printing visiting cards, take the picture and show it to them. Thank you.
And let's all have, I'm sure all of us install it and we on our level promote it and make as many people be aware of how in innovative ways, in easy small ways, we can do our bit to save Earth. Thank you so much. And now moving forward to our next panel session, I would be requesting our panelist, Dr. Supriya Sharma, to please come on stage. She's the Executive Director Strategy at Brainglow. Can you give a great round of applause, please? She will be also acting as the moderator for this session. Moving forward, I will be now inviting on stage our next panelist, Dr. Lokesh Jindal, who is the Associate Professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Can we give a great round of applause, please? I would now like to invite Mr. Nitin Gupta, who is the Managing Director at Fuji Film Sonosite. I would like to invite C. Raj Chabla, who is the Central Council member of ICSI. Can we give a great round of applause, please? I'm sorry, he's in absentia. Moving forward to our next panelist, I will be requesting Mr. Shishir Sinha, who is the Associate Editor at the Hindu Business Line, to please join us on the stage. Panelists. Let us not forget, we are here to learn as much as we can, to learn, to collaborate, and to catalyze change in our lives to make this world a better place. And with that, I will now be requesting our moderator, Dr. Supriya Sharma, to kindly take forward this session.
Everyone, really happy to see you again. Some new faces and some we had a chance to meet the last time. So really brilliant to see everyone today. Thank you for coming and thank you for your patience with us. Now, I am sitting on a ticking time bomb, it seems, because the earlier panel had been running late by 30 minutes, so then the clock is on us. Well, something that our MC, who's doing a lovely job, missed out telling is, we are actually here, all of us, we are actually here to receive the award for the best panel in terms of the diverse stakeholder representation. So that's why we are here. In as much as the earth has been shaken under my feet by the presentation which was shown by the previous panelists, we would prefer to keep it light. Light in terms of the fact that yes, we do have problems and we do have solutions at the same time, so we'll more be on the side of the solutions than the problems, so to say. And why I call our panel as a diverse panel would be because we have Mr. Nitin Gupta with us, who is representing the corporate as to where the policies are implemented in terms of the business world. We have Mr. Shishir Sinha, who is representing the journalism aspect of it, right from the horse's mouth where the policies are made. And then we have Dr. Lokesh Jindal from the academia, where the young minds are fed with the new technologies and the research and the developments in any field, so to say. And I myself, a humble global concerned citizen who happens to be the guinea pig for any social, political, financial, economic experiment that takes place around the world. totally confused with what is happening. What am I supposed to do? Like our guest of honor, Mr. Amit Verma, mentioned, of whether to live a frugal lifestyle or to make a choice. I'm confused, so I'm here to learn. Being a part of the solution, let's begin, because I am sure you are not here to listen to me, a humble global citizen, but we have our panelists here, so let's move on to them. But before that, as we said, we're going to keep it light. What was the highlight of your last year? What was the major highlight of your last year? Anybody from the audience? On a lighter note, what was the major highlight of 2023 for you?
It was the overall, awareness of sustainability in our day-to-day lives.
Thank you for adding that, sir. Overall awareness on sustainability. Anybody who would like to share their highlight on a personal level also? The one that you told your friend about at the New Year party, when they said, "Yaar pata hi nahi chala, saal to kaise nikal gaya, we were just running around here and there." Yeah?
I can share one. So when the Chennai and the Andhra cyclone was happening, I was holidaying in Udupi, right? Two sides of almost the same southern side, but on one way there was a cyclone, on the other there was good sunshine, enjoying the sunrise and all of that stuff, which was very paradoxical. But then I'm from Andhra, so my heart was there, but I was physically here for another purpose. So that was a highlight for me, how paradoxical our life can be.
Thanks for sharing that. We really appreciate it. So overall speaking, it had to be. And at the same time, that was also the time when our government, for the whole of 2023, was preaching about sustainability in various conferences, events, meetings, you name it, and sustainability was the word. So that was the highlight. Another highlight was India's G20 presidency, in line of the sustainable initiatives that we are holding ourselves accountable for. The G20 presidency, the major highlight within that G20 presidency was, I believe, from a humble citizen's perspective, was just the travel from here to there and everywhere, across India at least. So from north to south to east to west, we were everywhere. And I remember being in Aurangabad for the G20, and there my chauffeur tells me, if everybody understands Hindi, I can quote exactly his words, and he says, "Madam, pata hi nahi chala, yahan to ped nahi the, raat ko subah aaya to ped ug gaye yahan par." That was the kind of speed we were witnessing in terms of the beautification of the cities and the grandeur that we wanted to showcase to the people who were coming to visit our country from across the globe.
It should happen every year.
It should happen every year. So after Commonwealth, I guess G20 was another life-changing event for India in terms of the development and the beautification of our cities, so to say. Delhi, I believe, still is way behind. But that's a topic for another day. We'll get to G20. And as we speak of G20, which accounted for collective leadership, there were multiple topics which were discussed for the very first time in the history, as you can call about ecological restoration, marine spatial planning, and circular economy. We understand, I coming from Europe, I mean, having spent major time in Europe, I see circular economy was something very common we would talk about and we'll practice in our companies. But here, on a global level, G20 was the first time when circular economy was discussed at such level. So I'll move on to our panelist, Dr. Lokesh Jindal, and I would request him to share with us the major highlights from the G20 presidency in terms of the environment and climate action.
Right. I'm audible?
Yes.
Right. Yes. Thank you for putting me on the screen board now. As you rightly mentioned, there were three key pillars on which G20 was focusing in terms of sustainability. First was obviously the climate change. A lot of us have discussed that in the first panel as well, right? And the second was obviously the blue economy, which is the ocean economy, and the third was about the recyclable, reusable, and every of those three dimensions we talked about. We'll talk about those specifically. But before I talk about G20, few opinions I had about how the discussions happening in panel one, and the question which was raised by Professor C.S. Arora also from the DTU. See, try to understand that earthquakes, when they happen, right, because environment is very close to my heart, sustainability is very close to my heart actually. And we have been talking about ESG only lately in the boardrooms, but practically it's a matter of survival, right? And it has to be dealt in a different format. So earthquakes may not be predictable, but definitely, the impact of earthquakes is something which we can manage, right? As was rightly mentioned by one of the speakers, in terms of what is happening in the US, right? One of the co-panel, in the audiences said, if there's a pressure on the earth, if there's a lot of digging, a lot of illegal construction, okay, the impact, if we play with the nature, it is going to give back to us. That is for sure, right? So all this digging, all this river changing, because what happened in Hiroshima, all of us know that was landfill exercise, definitely not earthquake, but that was also attribution to the human intervention in the path of the nature. Then this is what we need to ensure, right? Second thing is, we have been talking a lot of negativity in terms of, India is at the 5th position in terms of footprint and everything. But let me tell you honestly, if you talk about the numbers, see why G20 becomes important is, because in G20, it's the 80% of the economy is handled by the G20, right? And we account for 2/3 of the population. 2/3 of the population accounting for 80% of the economy, world economy. Which means if we change, if G20 nations change and the people changes, the corporate change, the government policy changes in the right direction, it's going to have a huge impact on the entire world per se. And that was entirely the theme of the session as well. One world, one family, one future. Which is basically come from the Sanskrit slogan, right? Now, talking about what happened in G20, there are a lot of things happened in G20, it's a declaration which all of us can go through, right? Climate change definitely is one area which has been talked about tremendously. India per se, it has been figured out that India per se has a very low carbon footprint, only about 2 tons as compared to an average of 4.5. Okay? But the alarming situation here is that the footprint is increasing. It was in 1970, it was about 0.4. So from a journey from 0.4 to about 2. So we are moving ahead with the global average. So that is what is alarming for us. And in India, there are a lot of practices in any case we do, which are in any case climate friendly from that perspective. This is the first dimension of the discussion, right? For example, we wash clothes by hand, not by machines. Something which saves a lot of water and electricity and other resources, right? We sun dry our clothes, we wash utensils, right? And these are only Indian practices. In Paris, a lot of people travel by bicycle, right? That's the movement, a societal movement which happened, right? In Japan, if you give to somebody or there's a book launch or something, it happens in cloth, right? So that can be repeated again and again, right? Another example is the example which Prachi talked about was that grandmother's sari being used for the same purpose again by the granddaughter. So in any case, we have been doing that in India for generations. And that is the reason why our global footprint is less as compared to the global average. Talking about architecture format, if you talk about the forts, right? The forts, with a lot of fort visits, a lot of cultural visits as part of G20. When you go to the forts, those are actually eco buildings already in place. The construction material that has gone into it, the architecture that has gone into it, they very well, without damaging the ecological balance of the region, have been able to sustain the ecological balance and still create forts by managing the flow of sun, air and everything, where room temperatures are controlled and there is no requirement for AC or refrigerators, all those kind of things, not required practically, right? And in India, we are actually so proud of simple practice, like when we eat on streets, right? साल के पत्ते में गोलगप्पे बनते हैं, टिक्की मिलती है. That's again a biodegradable material. Again, it's eco-friendly practice that we've been practicing for generations. I think a lot of such practices are inherent to us. Probably the reason why, in terms of climate change, our footprint has increased, though it is less than the global average, is because there's a societal damage which has happened. Societal damage is the family system has got distorted, right? So from a joint family, we went to a nuclear setup. And from a nuclear setup to what all social problems we have, this, right? So if we actually split the family, it ultimately leads to those number of houses. So if if it's a joint family system, grandparents and parents and chachaji and tayaji and brothers, all siblings living in the same building per se, or maybe the same complex is not building. Right? Now everybody wants an independent house. Right? Now everybody wants an independent car. Now everybody wants an independent mobile. Now everybody wants not just a mobile, but they also want a mobile, a laptop and a tablet. Right? So I think what has happened, the impact on climate change has happened because of the change in the consumptions. Right? So here we also need to understand that the current, our Pradhan Mantri talks about Viksit Bharat. Right? The definition of Viksit Bharat, the developed nation as we call it, in the books is given, if you see that, it is given by the fact that how much we consume. Right? So the more you consume, the more developed you are. Right? Whereas in Indian perspective, in the climate change perspective per se, we have always believed the concept of 33% savings. Whereas these days we have just from 33% savings, we have gone to 33% of loans. Because of the higher consumption and aspirations that we have in our minds. Right? And that has led to a lot of impact on the climate change. So I think charity starts at home. So a lot of things that we can do on our own. Prachi's app is also doing that. Government has also launched an app last year. Last year they talked about a Merry Life. I think they're also one of the sponsors for this event. Right? So all of us know there's a Good Deeds Day which is coming up. Right? Are you aware of Good Deeds Day? Have you heard about this? You must have, right? Agreed. Anybody in the audience is? Good Deeds Day is something, it's a small task like Prachi has in our app. Merry Life is a government supported app. Okay, so small tasks there for university professionals, for college professionals, for school professionals and for industry professionals. Everybody there are small tasks. So right now there are 2 drives which are going on that Merry Life app. Okay, it can be easily downloaded or seen on the web portal. One is there's a cleaning drive which is going in the Kochi. Okay? Right, you can very well go and participate there or maybe have a replica of the same model in our respective places. Second is on the Good Deeds Day, which is this year, it is on 14th of April. Right, there's a task, there's an activity. So gamification of sustainability in terms of putting them in tasks, because that is what today's generation like. Task completion, points. And seeing an impact, how much impact they have made on the society. So I think we can use this, Prachi's platform or Merry Life platform or such platforms to see how our consumption patterns can be changed at the individual level. How, in order to make a meaningful impact on society. And they're not very complex tasks actually. Okay, they're meaningful tasks which we can incorporate in our day-to-day life. Right? Generally it is said, I'm not promoting here vegetarianism, but it is said that if you're a vegetarian, right, cooking vegetarian food consumes less of energy as compared to cooking a non-vegetarian food. Right? Small changes here and there, using earthen pots for cooking purposes, for serving purposes. Something which is very intrinsic to us. But these days we don't use it. Right? Plastic ban has happened, but how many of us are using the plastic very frequently? On an average, a plastic bag is used for 15 minutes. And just see the impact it has. I'm talking about the virgin plastic right now. A plastic which is generated for the first time. Just see the huge impact it has on the society, per se. Highly non-biodegradable. We are finding alternate uses. Highways have been constructed using plastic. That's a different story altogether. But why create nonsense so that it needs to be handled at a future date? Right? All of us are aware of the Sustainable Development Goals. Right? There's 17 of them, we know that. G20 was basically focused on SDG 11 to 15. Right? Where we talked about how do we live on the planet, how do we live in the ocean, all those kind of things. Right? Now all these policy documents are meaningful only if they are implemented. Right? And to implement them you need structures. Right? And I think one of the structure is the consumption structure, which will happen from people like us in the society. Second structure is required by the industry, which they are in any case doing because of the ESG mandate now in the boardrooms. Right? In any case, they have no other choice. And third structure which is required is the government will. Okay? The will of the ruling party. I think we have seen that kind of changes also happening in the interim budget which happened recently, which was talked by my other friends in the dais. Right? So I think all these things need to change, right? And very frequently, we only talk about, the impact of sustainability only on our lives and human lives. Please try to understand, in school we used to study about the ecological balance, right? Ecological balance does not only talk about mankind. So if we limit our understanding of sustainability in terms of only impact on the mankind, we're in any case being selfish. Right? Let's talk about the people around us, the other creatures around us, the birds, the fishes. What happens to the dump that goes into the ocean? In India, we had a philosophy where we used to say, Vayu Devta and Agni Devta and Jal Devta. What are we doing with the Jal Devta these days? What are we doing with the Vayu Devta these days? Are they only idols to be, do some puja here and there and not take care of them? Right? So all of us know scarcity of water is going to happen. 70% is water, earth is water, 70% of the body is water. So in any case, we cannot live without water. Right? But what are we fundamentally doing to take care, to ensure that the water is livable for the, in the ocean species. A lot of species are becoming extinct. Ocean water is becoming acidic. We see a sample of this in the Ganga River and Yamuna River nearby. But it's happening the world over. Right? So I think it's very important for us to, kind of do appropriate interventions at all three levels: production level, consumption level, and the policy level, so that the sustainability actually impacts us. We are actually SDG goals have been met only 12%. Okay, only 12% of the SDG goals have been met. So we are actually much behind the targets. And as mentioned by somebody in the previous panel, if we do not do it by 2050, we're not coming back. Ocean levels are going to rise by 2 feet to 6 feet by the change of the century. Huge impact. Right? Tsunamis will become very common. Right? So we should understand all these things. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that brief about the G20 presidency of India and what were the major points in the declaration pertaining to climate change and environment. Certainly, I traveled to Dubai. It was COP28, the 28th United Nations Conference on Climate Change. Wow, was it just about the conference, or it was about experiencing Dubai again? So you never get bored of it. Every time you go, you enjoy the place. Apart from that, 82 countries, right in one place, at COP28, discussing what can be done, what has been done, because it was claimed, my chair is going down. Is it because of climate change? It is going down anyways. I can probably stand, that would be a better idea. Or you can get the chair to change. And we were all there, discussing what can be done, what has been done, taking that first stock take of the Paris Agreement, the first official stock take of the Paris Agreement. And it was at the same time when the scientists were announcing that we are facing the hottest year 2023 in human history. Also, we are already 2 degrees centigrade higher than the pre-industrial levels. Congratulations. COP28 is taking place, and those are the announcements taking place on the other hand. Again, some declarations. A lot of things to be done, to be implemented for us. What is it that we can embrace in our daily lives? What is it that we cannot? What is it that our company board permits? What is it that doesn't? And when that COP28 was over, we headed to Davos. Yeah? So we moved to the World Economic Forum. And at the World Economic Forum, I decided to hand over the mic to Mr. Nitin Gupta, who is going to guide us on how the World Economic Forum was influential this time with specific respect to the environment and the change that has taken place in the climate so far. Please, over to you.
Thanks. First of all, thank you for having me here. And I think I am here from almost 1.5 hours, and good, insightful. As we always say, we are into so much into day-to-day life. These things once we hear it looks we are hearing first time. But of course, I think everyone have shared that this is the reality, and there is no, again I would say, hoax. Means it is happening, we are experiencing. So with the permission from Supriya, I will like start with a very small story originated from Buddha. So one of his disciples asked what is the meaning of sustainable life? So Buddha says, what do you do with your clothes? So he says, I wear them, and when they are torn, I just throw them away. So he says, no, you wear them, when they are torn, use for some other purpose, for example, cleaning and all. So he says, okay, then after, when it is not, you are not able to clean with them, what do you do? Ultimately you have to throw them. He says, no, use it for some other purpose. And finally he says, use the thread for the diya. So that is the philosophy, the start to end by what we say recycle. Nowadays, I think those days, what we all say India is a guru, and we respect Buddha and other things, because what we are talking in forms of English and all, I think they are inherited in our culture. It is just with time we are reinventing the wheel, I would say. We are going and following West in that, but we are the guru of most of the things. So that's what very insightful. Yesterday I just read that story, thought of sharing with you. And I think a lot have been shared, and World Economic Forum we all know, and at this time the theme was sustainable, how do we build a sustainable future and a coherent action for the world leaders. So world leaders are there, very influential personalities are there, and I think there are a lot of development happening. Good thing is, I think these things are being talked openly. Now I think everybody is accepting. Earlier people used to deny, and there are a lot of forums which is happening. I think one major was climate change, which I think a lot have been discussed, and there was another thing which appealed to me, I think biodiversity loss, which I think is directly, indirectly affecting us. There are 1 billion species already evaporated from the planet, and they are no more with us. I think 60% of coral reef, those who are in ocean economy would understand, 60% is already depleted. So these kind of biodiversity loss is significant until we control. So there was a lot of talk on that. One thing I really appealed to me was our Prime Minister said life in the sense lifestyle for environment friendly. That is something now I think in the previous session also that lady talked about it, sir also talked about it. I think until we change, we expect corporations to change, but corporation will change only when consumer behavior will change. Consumer behavior will change when we ourselves change. So I think previously shared, so I don't take any credit, but 90% travel I use metro. So these are small changes. Means of course it is not hard and fast that you have to use metro, but wherever convenient use metro or mix of metro or cab. These kind of probably somebody very insightfully told, don't print visiting card now. You have a lot of applications, or you can share through Bluetooth your information. So until we change these, I think it is very difficult. So I think lot have been talked. So maybe I'll thank.
Expect that to specifically in terms of time, very crisp. So WEF 2024 was majorly about being nature positive and inclusive in terms of our growth. One very important highlight which struck me as such, I will take a few seconds if you permit me to share that, was toning down of the language. So earlier we used to say we want to phase out the fossil fuels completely. This time at WEF, we toned down our language and we said, instead of phasing out, we are going to transition to major use of fossil fuels in terms of our energy production. So I believe there is somewhere we are beginning to understand what is practical and what isn't at this point in time, and we are giving ourselves the privilege to take the amount of time that takes us in order to make the transition that we need to. But as you know, a concerned, humble citizen, what concerns me more than WEF 2024 is our budget, the interim budget, which has just been released. February is the month of the year probably that we look out for. So this time, we said our overarching objective is to reduce the budget deficit, so 5.2 to 5.1, down from 5.8% in the previous fiscal year. Sounds brilliant. But what happens to the green initiatives? Those are the green initiatives that Mr. Shishir Sinha is going to be talking about today, because as a normal citizen, what I understand by a green initiative is when I open the SBI net banking, I see a green loan for a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler or whatever. But at least I'm happy they are mentioning the word green as opposed to any other private bank, which isn't doing it so far. So over to you, Mr. Shishir Sinha, and please help us understand what have been the green initiatives in the budget this year.
And if you permit me, I would like to speak in Hindi.
Wonderful.
क्योंकि क्या होता है कि देखिए मैं अंग्रेजी का खाता हूँ सर, सीधी सी बात है, अंग्रेजी अखबार में काम करता हूँ, अंग्रेजी की खाता हूँ, दिल की भाषा होती है ना तो हिंदी है। तो इसलिए मैंने सोचा क्यों ना अपनी बात हिंदी में रखी जाए। और आपने एक चीज़ गौर किया कि जब कभी भी हम लोग पर्यावरण की बात कर रहे हैं, प्रदूषण की बात कर रहे हैं और बजट की बात कर रहे हैं, आपने इस बजट में देखा दो खास शब्द लाए गए। एक था ज्ञान, GYAN, अंग्रेजी के अक्षर है, लेकिन ज्ञान जो है वो बजट का थीम था, गरीब, युवा, अन्नदाता और नारी शक्ति। और इसके पहले अगर आप 2021 में जाएं, जब प्रधानमंत्री ने पंचामृत शब्द का इस्तेमाल किया, हम लोग पूजा में पंचामृत का करते हैं, यहाँ पर पर्यावरण और प्रदूषण की समस्या से समझने के लिए 2021 में जब ग्लासगो में समिट चल रहा था, वहाँ पर प्रधानमंत्री ने पहली बार पंचामृत शब्द का इस्तेमाल किया। एंड व्हाट आर दोस पंचामृत? पंचामृत की बात क्या है? पहला था इंडिया विल रीच, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल माय सिंसियर अपॉलजी, मैंने प्रिंट कर लिया था, मुझे मैं माफी चाहूँगा, गलती हो गई, आप गलती हो गई तो आप मुझे क्या कह सकते हैं, सॉरी। तो पहला जो गोल था, इंडिया विल रीच इट्स नॉन फॉसिल एनर्जी कैपेसिटी टू 500 गीगावाट बाय 2030। सेकंड, India will meet 50% of its energy requirement from renewable energy by 2030. Third, India will reduce the total projected carbon emission by 1 billion tons from now onwards till 2030. Fourth, by 2030, India will reduce the carbon intensity of the economy by less than 45%. And fifth, by the year 2070, India will achieve the target of net zero. These Panchamrit will be an unprecedented contribution of India to climate action. End of the quote. ये प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी ने 2021 में कहा था। और आज जब हम लोग इंटरिम बजट की बात कर रहे हैं, सच बताएं आपको, तो हमारा 4 साल से जो बजट है वो ग्रीन बजट ही है, क्योंकि ये पेपरलेस बजट है। आप 4 साल से देखिए कोई भी पेपर नहीं। हम लोग के लिए क्या होता था कि एज ए जर्नलिस्ट हमारी सबसे पहली जिम्मेदारी होती थी कि 12 जो डॉक्यूमेंट आते थे उसको कलेक्ट करना। अब हम कलेक्ट करने की बात नहीं सोचते, हमारी पहली कोशिश होती है कि हम नेट पे जाएं। तो हमारा ग्रीन बजट ऑलरेडी आ चुका है। नाउ वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट ग्रीन इनिशिएटिव। और सर पूछिए तो पिछले साल का अगर आप बजट देखें 2023-24 का, दैट कैन बी क्लासिफाइड एज द फर्स्ट ग्रीन बजट ऑफ इंडिया। और ये मैं नहीं कह रहा हूँ, बहुत सारे जो रिसर्चर्स हैं उन्होंने इस बात को कहा है कि 2023-24 का बजट ग्रीन बजट है। वाई वी आर कॉलिंग इट इज ग्रीन बजट? इसके पीछे क्या रीजन था? इसके पीछे रीजन ये था कि कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव ग्रीन इकोनॉमी के बारे में कंसेप्ट उस बजट में आया था। इसके पहले क्या हो रहा था कि सारे बजट में बिट्स एंड पीसेस में, कभी एक ये स्कीम है, कभी वो स्कीम है, कभी हाइड्रोजन की स्कीम है, तो कभी कोई स्कीम है। उसके पहले जितनी भी स्कीम्स थे बिट्स एंड पीसेस में आ रहे थे। और हम सभी जानते हैं कि बिट्स एंड पीसेस में आने का रिजल्ट ये होता है कि आपके पास उसका जो इम्पैक्ट आना चाहिए वो नहीं आ रहा था। लेकिन अगर आप पिछले साल का बजट देखें, जिसकी कुछ हाइलाइट्स मैं आपके सामने रखना चाहूंगा। पहली चीज उसमें ये था कि नेट जीरो एमिशन जो कि 2021 में अनाउंस हुआ था। India is set to achieve its aim of 40% installed electric capacity from non-fossil fuels ahead of 2030. ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट इसलिए है क्योंकि आज हम सभी जानते हैं कि फॉसिल फ्यूल हमारे लिए अब धीरे धीरे कम होता जा रहा है। I mean, we all know it's not going to be everlasting kind of thing. हमको कहीं ना कहीं ऑल्टरनेटिव सोचना होगा, इसलिए हम लोग न्यू एंड रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी की बात कर रहे हैं। अब सभी लोग कह रहे थे कि मेट्रो, मैं आपको बताऊं, मैंने 4 साल पहले अपनी गाड़ी हटा दी और केवल मैं मेट्रो का इस्तेमाल करता हूं, क्योंकि मुझे लगा कि शायद अगर कोई कंट्रीब्यूशन इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे हम लोग कर सकते हैं तो वो कुछ इस तरीके से कर सकते हैं। लोग दिल्ली में जितनी भी समस्याएं लोग बहुत गिनाते हैं, ये समस्या है, वो समस्या है, मेट्रो में सीट नहीं मिलती, लेकिन आप कितना बड़ा कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहे हैं अपने फ्यूचर के लिए, ये भी तो सोचिए। तो जो आज हम बात कर रहे हैं इमिशन टू बी अचीव बिफोर 2030, नाउ यू मे आस्क कि 2030 का ऐसा इंपॉर्टेंस क्या है। सो इफ आई जस्ट वांट टू टेक यू टू द, अभी एक रिव्यू जनवरी में अनाउंस हुआ था, जनवरी में रिव्यू प्रेजेंट किया गया था फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री की तरफ से। एंड डिड यू नोटिस उस रिव्यू की सबसे बड़ी खास बात क्या थी? सबसे बड़ी बात ये थी कि बाय 2030 वी एम्स टू बिकम $7 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी। अब हम 5 ट्रिलियन की बात नहीं कर रहे। So if we are talking about $7 trillion economy and we are not focusing on climate change, if we are not focusing on environment, if we are not focusing on pollution, तो आपके लिए $7 trillion का कोई मतलब नहीं है। 5 trillion, 7 trillion, 10 trillion नंबर सुनने में अच्छे लगते हैं। The important thing is whether the life is affected or not, life is getting benefited or not, तब जाकर के उसका मतलब निकलता है। दूसरा एक और जो उस बजट का अनाउंसमेंट था, an investment of 20,000 crore, including the central support of 300 crore, proposed for renewable energy evacuation and grid integration by laying interstate transmission of 13 gigawatt of renewable energy from Ladakh. तो आप अगर इस चीज को देखें, फोकस क्या था? फोकस ये था कि हम जहां इकोनॉमी के साइज को बढ़ा रहे हैं, क्या हम उसके साथ साथ इन्वायरमेंट की चीजों के बारे में सोच रहे हैं कि नहीं? हमारे लिए फॉसिल फ्यूल सबसे आसान है। आज के दिन में देखें ना, दिल्ली में पुरानी कहावत है, दिल्ली में जब तक टशन ना हो तो दिल्ली दिल वालों की नगरी नहीं। हमें टशन चाहिए, और टशन क्या है? एक गाड़ी से काम नहीं चलता है। जिस इलाके में हम रहते हैं, हमारा घर राजेंद्र नगर में, राजेंद्र नगर में मैंने देखा कि एक घर में 4-4 गाड़ियां हैं। 2 गाड़ी का इस्तेमाल पार्किंग लॉट को घेरने के लिए किया है। अब वो जो पार्किंग लॉट को घेरने के लिए आपने गाड़ी खरीदी, जो कि मारुति 800 ऑल्टो है या फिर हुंडई का i10 आपने खरीदा, कभी न कभी जो आप चला रहे हैं, और एक तरफ तो आप बड़ी बात करते हैं कि हमें इमिशन के बारे में सोचना, हमें एनवायरमेंट के बारे में सोचना, हमें फ्यूचर जनरेशन के बारे में सोचना है। घर में 4 गाड़ियां क्यों? हम क्यों ना अपने लेवल से शुरू करें? ये जो हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं कि हमने इतना पैसा इन्वेस्ट किया, हमारे इतना $1 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी होना चाहिए, बट व्हाट वी आर डूइंग आवर सेल्फ। तो हम जब बजट का प्रपोजल देखते हैं ना, तो बजट के प्रपोजल में मैक्रो बातें होती हैं। आर वी थिंकिंग फ्रॉम द माइक्रो लेवल? नाउ कम टू द माइक्रो लेवल, स्विच टू FY25 इंटरिम बजट। इस FY25 इंटरिम बजट में क्या अनाउंस हुआ? रूफटॉप सोलर पैनल। बहुत अच्छा स्कीम है भाई। 1 करोड़ घर में छतों पर सोलर पैनल लगाए जाएंगे। अब आप मुझे बताइए कि दिल्ली और मुंबई जैसे शहरों में कितने घरों में कितने लोगों के पास छत नहीं है? हम सभी मल्टी स्टोरी फ्लैट्स में रहते हैं, जहां पर छत की हमें कीमत चुकानी है, और छत को हम ऐसा बचा करके रखते हैं कि कोई इसका सदुपयोग ना करे या कोई इसका इस्तेमाल ना करे। आई एम सॉरी यूजिंग द वर्ड सदुपयोग। तो अब वो चीज हमको अगर ध्यान में रखना, तो उस छत का क्या इस्तेमाल करेंगे आप? दूसरी तरफ आप दिल्ली में देखिए कि छत पे क्या है? 4 पानी की टंकी। जगह है आपके पास, सोलर पैनल कहां लगाए? टंकी के ऊपर टांग देंगे। ठीक है सर, टंकी के ऊपर टांग दीजिए। लेकिन दिल्ली में एक और आतंक है, बंदरों का। तो आप बताइए इससे कैसे निपटेंगे? तो हमारी समस्या ये नहीं है कि हमारे पास सोलर पैनल नहीं है, हमारी समस्या ये है कि सोलर पैनल लगाने की जगह और सोलर पैनल के रखरखाव की जगह है कि नहीं। दूसरा ये 2025 के इंटरिम बजट में क्या कहा गया कि हम ई मोबिलिटी को बढ़ावा देंगे। वेरी गुड, सुनने में बहुत अच्छा लगता है। आप में से कितने लोगों के पास ई व्हीकल है? हाथ उठाइएगा। 1 2 That's it. सिर्फ 2 लोगों के पास इस हॉल में, जो करीबन हम लोग 70-80 लोग बैठे हुए हैं, सिर्फ 2 लोगों के पास ई व्हीकल है। और आप दोनों लोग इस बात से परेशान होंगे, पहला चार्जिंग कहां लगाएं? अगर आप खुशकिस्मत हैं, एक सरकारी नौकरी में काम करते हैं, केंद्र सरकार के दफ्तर में काम करते हैं, वहां पे तो चार्जिंग स्टेशन बना दिए, कुछ जगहों पे चार्जिंग स्टेशन बना दिए। लेकिन यहां से अगर आपको जयपुर जाना हो तो आप ईवी का इस्तेमाल नहीं करते।
सर जरूर लगता है कि जाम ज्यादा मिल गया तो कोई बीच में
ना हो गया। तो आप ईवी का सोचिए कि हमारे लिए सबसे बड़ी समस्या क्या है कि हम मोबिलिटी की बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन मोबिलिटी का सपोर्टिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर कब बनेगा? ये वही कहानी है कि मुर्गी पहले आई या अंडा आया पहले, कि पहले हम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाए या फिर हम पहले आप गाड़ी लें। तो देखिए, कुल मिलाकर के मैं इतना ही कहना चाहता हूं कि हमारे लिए प्रपोजल्स बहुत है। मैं आपके लिए सारे प्रपोजल्स नहीं पढ़ना चाहता, मेरे पास 4 पन्ने हैं। आप कहेंगे तो पूरा मैं बजट स्पीच पढ़ सकता हूं। निर्मला जी ने 57 मिनट लिए थे, मैं 40 मिनट में सारी स्पीच खत्म कर सकता हूं। लेकिन मेरा मकसद स्पीच पढ़ना नहीं है, मेरा मकसद ये है कि हम लोग जिन प्रयासों की बात कर रहे हैं, उन प्रयासों के लिए क्या प्रयास किए गए हैं कि वो प्रयास फलीभूत हो। ऐसा ना हो कि हमारे प्रयास केवल कागजों में सीमित रह जाए, हम लोग पर्यावरण की चर्चा इस हॉल में करते रह जाएं। और देखिए, आज एक संयोग देखिए कि सामने भी पर्यावरण की चर्चा चल रही है। तो पहले मैं वहीं चला गया था, उन लोगों ने मुझे चाय भी पिला दी, मेरे कागज भी प्रिंट कर दिए। फिर उन्होंने कहा कि सर आप किस सेशन में हैं? तो मैंने कहा सर 12 बजे की सेशन है, बोले 12 बजे तो MOU साइन होना है, तो MOU किसके साथ साइन होना, तो बोले इरेडा के साथ, और उसके साथ आप इरेडा से आए हैं क्या? मैंने कहा नहीं मैं इरेडा से नहीं आया हूँ, मुझे तो इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में जाना है। बोले नहीं सर वो सामने वाला। तो चलिए अच्छी बात थी, मुझे एक प्याली चाय मिल गई और थोड़ा सा समय अच्छे से गुजर गया। मेरा सिंपल से इतना कहना है कि आज हम इस 2 हॉल में चर्चा कर रहे हैं, प्रयासों पर चर्चा कर रहे हैं। दिन भर के बाद जब शाम 6 बजे ये कॉन्फ्रेंस खत्म होगा, आपके पास ज्ञान का भंडार होगा, लेकिन क्या वो ज्ञान के भंडार के सदुपयोग करने का आपके पास ज्ञान होगा? ये मेरा महत्वपूर्ण प्रयास है, जिसके लिए मैं आपका ध्यान आकृष्ट करना चाहता हूं कि हम केवल प्रयास की चर्चा ना करें कि ये कर दिया, ये हो गया, ऐसे हो गया, चिंता की चर्चा ना करें, क्योंकि हम बहुत ज्यादा पेसिमिस्ट हो जाएंगे। हम सभी लोग बहुत ज्यादा निराशावादी नहीं होना चाहते। अभी जब मैंने स्लाइड्स देखे तो डर सा लगने लगा कि अरे भाई हर रोज कुछ ना कुछ हो रहा है, कभी भूकंप आ जाता है, कभी, ये बात सही है, सर ने कहा था कि भूकंप को इससे ना जोड़ा जाए, सॉरी सर मैं नहीं जोड़ रहा हूँ, मैं जैसे एक बात कह रहा हूँ कि बाढ़ और भूकंप, मेरा हेडक्वार्टर चेन्नई में है सर, चेन्नई में भी जब बाढ़ आई थी वहाँ फंसा हुआ था मैं, अब वो डर लग रहा था कि पता नहीं जाए तो कहाँ जाए, क्योंकि पानी का प्रवाह किस तरीके का मुझे नहीं पता है। तो आजकल हम सारी अनिश्चितताओं के दौर में गुजर रहे हैं। हमारी कोशिश ये होनी चाहिए कि हम प्रयास को पूरा करने के प्रयास के ऊपर चर्चा ज्यादा करें, बजाय इस चीज के कि हम प्रयास के ब्लूप्रिंट पे चर्चा करते रह जाएं। तो अंत में मेरा इतना ही सबमिशन है कि जब आप यहाँ से शाम को 6 बजे जाएं तो ये सोचिए कि जो हमने सीखा उसे पूरा करने के लिए हम अपने स्तर पर क्या कर सकते हैं। देखिए इकोनॉमिक्स का स्टूडेंट रहा हूँ, मैक्रो से हम माइक्रो पे जाते हैं, मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक्स की यहाँ चर्चा होगी, आप अपने स्तर पर माइक्रो इकोनॉमिक्स की चर्चा करिए, तभी ये कॉन्फ्रेंस सक्सेसफुल होगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
That was really amazing, Mr. Sinha, and what I specifically want to take back is the importance of strategizing and taking action. Without further ado, I would like to open the floor to questions instead of we summarizing, because the success of any event, any product, any service lies on the other side of the table. And we are so glad again and fortunate that you have decided to join us today. So what's important is your time. Therefore, I'd like to open the floor to any questions, comments, feedback that you might have. Please feel free to share.
I don't have a question, but I want to appreciate Mr. Gupta, Mr. Sinha and Mr. Pandey earlier, that they are traveling by metro. And this is a very good thing, because the growth of a society, I personally feel, is not gauged by the number of cars people buy, but by how many affluent and people who can afford, those people travel by the public transport. I worked in Western India also. This country, you said, Kashan something you said? That is prevalent in North India, more so in Delhi.
Mumbai mein nahi.
Not in Mumbai, not in Ahmedabad. In Mumbai,
people travel.
Very rich people, extremely rich. They'll take a local. No 2-3 cars, a simple. So I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And if I can add, sir, here, मुंबई में एक देखिए क्या कहते हैं ना कि कभी-कभी जब कमी होती है तो आप उसका रास्ता ढूंढ निकालते हैं। मुंबई इज ऑल अबाउट द स्टेट सिटी, तो आपके पास ऑप्शन नहीं है। दिल्ली में क्या ऑप्शन है कि चलो यार तालकटोरा से नहीं जाएंगे तो हम धौलाकुआं होते निकल जाएंगे।
सब कल्चरल डिफरेंस बहुत ज़्यादा है,
बहुत ज़्यादा
काम किया। माय वाइफ इज आल्सो फ्रॉम बॉम्बे और मैं रहा भी हूँ, मैं यहाँ तो रहता ही हूँ, जमीन आसमान का फर्क।
वही सर, तो ये चीज वहाँ पर एक कमी है, उस कमी के मुताबिक अपने आप को ढालने की कोशिश हुई। हमारे पास सब कुछ है, फिर भी हमने कुछ और रास्ता ढूंढा ताकि हमारा टशन बना रहे, उसमें कोई कमी ना।
Any other question, comments?
Yeah, how we will have a economic balance with this sustainable initiatives, whatever we are supposed to take under the green environment. Like we have a target of say 7% annual growth. Then with these kind of initiatives, maybe we will not be able to achieve the 7% growth, or even the unemployment rate will go up. How we are going to counter that?
It's for me.
For anybody?
Okay. So first of all, I do not agree with this kind of conclusion. I'm sorry to say, sir, कि अगर हम ये करेंगे तो हमारे ग्रोथ पे क्या असर पड़ेगा। Like I take the example of automobiles, sir. We all know that automobile sector contributes 40% in total GST collection. In terms of overall manufacturing, automobile has the largest share. There are still producing more fossil fuel car than the EV car, and they will say that government is not providing infrastructure, that's why we do not have any other option but to produce the fossil cars. Fair enough, sir. What they are doing at their end to promote the EV by providing more and more infrastructure. So it is not something that you are depending only on the government, that government has to do that, then only I will do that. And then you will say, हमारी industry affect हो रही है. मुझे याद है सर कि ऑटोमोबाइल पे सबसे ज़्यादा GST का रेट है, EV पे 5 और 12 का, चूँकि मैं इकोनॉमिक्स का स्टूडेंट हूँ सर और दिन भर टैक्सेशन की ही बात करता हूँ, तो इसीलिए थोड़ा सा टैक्स की बात मैं कर लेता हूँ. GST उस पर 28% है, 2 व्हीलर्स पे भी 28% है. हर कोई ये कहता था कि इस पे GST घटा दो, क्यों? क्योंकि एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट होगा. बट व्हाट अबाउट द अदर इम्प्लीकेशन ऑफ मोर एंड मोर कार्स ऑन द रोड? आप ये भी तो सोचो सर, अगर आप वहाँ पे EV डेवलप करते हो, आप वहाँ पे एक ऐसा ट्रांसपोर्टेशन सिस्टम डेवलप करते हो जो कि लोग अफोर्ड कर सके इन टर्म्स ऑफ द पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्टेशन, व्हाई कांट वी हैव दैट? सो इट इज नॉट समथिंग कि हम इसको रोक देंगे तो हमारा डेवलपमेंट अफेक्ट हो जाएगा. वी हैव द ऑप्शन सर, वी हैव द ऑल्टरनेटिव, वी हैव टू थिंक अबाउट दोज ऑल्टरनेटिव. सर आई थिंक, हैव यू गॉन टू एम्स्टर्डम सर? Amsterdam, if you're riding a bicycle,
it's a city of cycles.
It's a city of cycle, and if you're riding a cycle, the car will stop. In India, in Delhi, मुझे कहने की जरूरत नहीं. Thank you, sir.
और इवन इन दिल्ली सर, मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि ये कंटिन्यू विद व्हाट सिन्हा जी सेड, हमारा ये मिथ है. बड़ा अच्छा आपने क्वेश्चन पूछा है कि हमारा ये मिथ है कि डेवलपमेंट हमारी सस्टेनेबिलिटी के साथ नहीं हो सकती. आई विल टॉक अबाउट 1 or 2 एग्जांपल जो कि वेल अडॉप्टेड है सोसाइटी के अंदर. ईवी कार्स का एक कंसर्न हो सकता है, लेकिन आप देखिए जो लाइटिंग का टेक्नोलॉजी है, मैं यहाँ पे लाइट्स देख रहा हूँ बहुत सारी, जो लाइटिंग का टेक्नोलॉजी है वो कैसे हमारा टेक्नोलॉजी इनोवेशन से चेंज होते होते अब हम LED और उस तक पे आ गए हैं, जिससे कि हमारा बहुत सारा बचत बचता है. तो मनी सेव्ड इज ऑल्सो मनी है, पॉइंट नंबर 1. और दूसरी चीज़ ये कि हमारे जो डेवलपमेंट के मैट्रिक्स हैं वो भी इवेंचुअली चेंज होने वाले हैं. जो मैंने आपको स्टार्टिंग में हिंट करा था कि अभी डेवलपमेंट के जो मैट्रिक्स हैं, GDP GNP के जो फॉर्मूलाज हैं किताबों में जो हम पढ़ते हैं स्कूलों में, वो कंजम्पशन बेस्ड हैं. तो हम इसीलिए GDP बढ़ाने का 7% ग्रोथ का इंटरप्रिटेशन हो गया ज़्यादा कंजम्पशन, विच इज़ नॉट ट्रू. तो वी नीड टू चेंज द गेम ऑल्सो इन टर्म्स ऑफ व्हाट इज गोइंग टू बी द मैट्रिक, बट दैट्स अ मैक्रो लेवल थिंग. बट मैं आपको ये कहने की कोशिश करूँगा कि गॉसिप डिसीजन जैसे हो, जैसे सोलर सेल्स, अभी इनकी बात हुई, सोलर की बात हुई. अब सोलर टेक्नोलॉजी आपका छत है जितनी भी है 5% 10% जो भी है करोड़ों घरों में लगाना है, हम उसमें लगा सकते हैं, लग जाता है, आइडेंटिफाई हो जाते हैं, RWA की मदद से कुछ भी लग जाते हैं. उसमें फिर एक फंडामेंटल क्वेश्चन ये आता है कि टेक्नोलॉजी अगर हमारा यूज़ करते हैं तो मेरा बिजली का बिल भी तो कम आता है और मैं सोसाइटी को कॉन्ट्रीब्यूट भी कर रहा हूँ. तो मेरी जेब से क्या गया? मैं अगर गाड़ी खरीदने में पैसा लगा सकता हूँ, अभी तो ये 2 चीज़ें ऐसी मैंने आपको ये बताया जिसमें पैसे बच रहे हैं, जिसमें ऑल्टरनेटिव सोल्यूशन जो है वो सस्ता पड़ रहा है. मतलब LED बल्ब जो है वो पुराने टेक्नोलॉजी से सस्ता पड़ रहा है ना. लेकिन जैसे EV कार्स हैं महंगी पड़ रही हैं. तो क्या हम यहाँ तक रेडी हैं, एटलीस्ट जो ग्रुप यहाँ पे बैठा है, क्योंकि हम तो मोस्ट अवेयर ग्रुप होना चाहिए ना, राइट? इट इज नॉट ओनली द पीपल ऑन द डाइस. आई मीन ऑब्वियसली वी हैव सम नॉलेज, वी आर डूइंग अ पेयर लर्निंग शेयरिंग, लेकिन हम सब तो मोस्ट अवेयर ग्रुप होना चाहिए. क्या हम लोग एक्स्ट्रा, अगर मेरे पास 2 चॉइसेस हैं, एक फ़ोन जो कि मेरे पास एनवायरनमेंट फ्रेंडली रॉ मटेरियल से बना है और एक जो मेरा लेकिन महंगा है, और एक जो बायोडिग्रेडेबल मटेरियल से नहीं बना है लेकिन सस्ता है, क्या मैं एक्स्ट्रा पैसे लगाने के लिए तैयार हूँ क्या? ये क्वेश्चन सर मेरे को अपने से पूछना है. तो ग्रोथ का एक तो जो GDP का इंटरप्रिटेशन है, ग्रोथ का जो इंटरप्रिटेशन है वो डिफरेंट है, और सस्ते सोल्यूशन भी हैं, और यहाँ पे इंडस्ट्री अकेडमी कोलैबोरेशन भी आता है जहाँ पे हम लोग बहुत सारे इनोवेशंस भी करते हैं. अनफॉर्चुनेटली हम लोग उसको पेटेंट भी कराते हैं आजकल, जो भारतीय संस्कृति में नहीं है, क्योंकि विश्व का कल्याण करना तो काय का पेटेंट. बट एनीवेज वी गेट इट पेटेंट, देन वी मूव अहेड.
And Jitin sir, one more thing I would just like to add, one line please. Sure. When we talk about GDP, it indicates what kind of consumption we are having in the economy. We are not talking more about the GVA, which talks about the supply side. So our headline emanates from the GDP, not from the GVA. That is the basic concept which we need to change when we're talking about how we can do. That's the right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are actually standing between you and lunch. So thank you to my panelists. A lot of appreciation for you and a bigger appreciation for everybody around here. Thank you so much for being with us.
I would like to thank all our panelists and our moderator for such a thought-provoking and stimulating session, which is the much need of the hour for us to be aware of how we can contribute on our part. And I would now like to invite Ms. Neha Rastogi. She's a member of the ESG committee who specially travelled from Dehradun to be here with us to be a part of the summit. I request her to please come on stage and felicitate our moderator, Dr. Supriya Sharma. Can we give a great round of applause, please?
Because they don't have chlorophyll. Okay.
Well, that's an interesting fact. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
I would now like to invite Ms. And I now request her to please tell I think
Now the
even
plant, 1-2 bottle of alcohol, but we cannot take the plant inside.
Then Blue Smart.
start our next round of panel sessions timely. Thank you so much.